pandemic pivot. This is our virtual lunch. We have Jason Meyer of Meyer Business Law. He's dedicated to the legal needs of entrepreneurs and the businesses they run. Jason's going to provide a brief update on some businesses that are, what's open, can you open, what happens to badly behaved people who open. Aisha is the owner of Hamilton Law, and she focuses her practice on employment law. And she's going to talk about the different laws that we are, these situations that are so unique to this pandemic, and what we can do both as the owner and as an employee, both sides of that. I am Alisa McCabe. I'm the owner at First Steps Financial, and we are a dedicated team of accountants and advanced certified QuickBooks Pro advisors, and we are helping our business owners through this pandemic by tracking their financials and keeping them organized and tracking all their information. Danielle Gill is with First Steps Financial. She is our digital marketing manager, and she is here to help us with the technology side of it. And fingers crossed we don't lose power, because it looks like there's some thunderstorms coming through. Also, just to let everybody know, all the information that we express in this webinar is informational only, and it is just used for general education information only. If you have any specific questions for any of us, feel free to reach out to myself or Jason or Aisha for further information or to get a consultation on anything that we talk about. So I just wanted to quickly, and I will not drone on, I promise, about this, talk about the PPP loan forgiveness. So just so you know, it is an 11-page document for forgiveness. Now, doesn't that sound like fun? I know everybody's excited. Don't get all giddy now. Y'all get to fill that out once.
Some of us do like documents like that, but that's our own.
I have to be honest. They actually put in, they put an estimated time that it takes about 3 hours to fill it out. We have filled out one internally, and we're familiar with this type of work. It took us 5 hours to do it. So I imagine if someone's unfamiliar with this, it's going to take significantly more.
Wow.
And I also wouldn't get anybody's panties in a bunch about it just yet, because the laws are going to change. And that is just, we are actually sitting tight. Even if you are on week 7 or week 8 and you have to file for forgiveness soon, hold off, because it passed the House at that forgiveness, the time period is going to be extended through the end of the year. But the Senate now has it, and they want it to be 16 weeks. So, and they're also grappling over the percentages of payroll. So it was 75% had to be spent on payroll. It went down to 60 through the House. Senate wants it back. When they're done playing ball, then we'll know. So just all I can tell you is sit tight on it. And if you have any questions about it, please feel free to ask and put it in the chat box. But that's where I'm going to leave that, because it's again, it's still up in the air, and nobody has any real answers. So it doesn't make any sense to make any movements on it.
So Alyssa, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Sorry. Let me ask you a question, Alyssa. What types of things are you recommending, or what are you doing for your clients to prepare them for the types of applications they're going to need to file, and the PPP loan forgiveness paperwork? I mean, how do you get people ready? I know that your clients are primarily business owners, right? So they're standing now at the brink of either having taken on a massive loan that they hoped would be forgiven, or really making sure they dot their I's and cross their T's to actually get this forgiven.
Yeah. So we are, so look, because we work with QuickBooks Online, we have everything set up in there so that it's documenting how they're using the loans. And we're also collecting that third-party documentation. Payroll, every payroll run, you can get a report from the payroll company and different documentation, making sure that we have their bank statements and things like that to back up everything that is going to go against this. We're also asking landlords to send, if they can, to send invoices, because normally they don't send that. And there's nothing that indicates we have to do that, but I feel better having that documentation than not having it. And that's what we're, the other thing, and this will come from the payroll companies, is a report from the payroll company that shows more information about full-time employees. And so that is, that's one of the things. And that brings me to this. And Aisha, this is a question for you. And this is a question I keep getting from my clients, is like, okay, we're back to work. And they're calling their workforce back and they're excited, and people don't want to come back. And honestly, the major reason is getting a lot of money on unemployment. I don't want to come back. So like, what do you do? I mean, it's like, as a business owner, they're worried about getting the forgiveness for the loan. They put in that person's salary in that, PPP loan that they got. And now, Joe Schmo won't come back, and they can't. And then like, can they fire them and then hire somebody else? Is that firing them with cause? Like, what do you do?
So it's a great question. And I'm fielding these calls all the time, right? But I'm primarily an employee's attorney, a plaintiff's attorney. So what that means is I'm getting employees calling and saying, what do? I don't feel safe going back. And so one of the few questions I ask them is, why don't you want to come back? Right? And this is something that an employer should be asking, is why don't you want to come back? Do you have a medical condition? Do you have a family member with a medical condition? I really need you. So can you please, tell me what it is? You have to engage in that interactive discussion, right? The other thing you want to really think about as a business owner is the big picture of, you have this team in place. You really want this team in place. This is a valued employee. How do we make it work so that all of our objectives are addressed? So if they have some kind of concern, but they've actually been working very effectively from home, can they continue to work from home even though you don't think that's ideal, right? And then really, as a business owner, think critically about why you don't think that's ideal. Was there a lapse in their performance? Did you feel that productivity dropped? Did you feel that they were not answering the phones when they should have been answering the phones that have been forwarded to them? Because you also, as a business owner, need to be able to articulate some kind of legitimate business reason why you're telling them that you're not going to allow them to continue to work from home. Now, the situation of, I'm making more on unemployment, I just don't want to come back, without being able to articulate some medical need or some specific concern about why you don't want to come back, I would say, look, you're being offered a job. There's 40 million people on unemployment now. You're being told your job is available. You got to go back to work. And if you choose not to go back to work, you recognize that it is your choice not to go back to work and that you are voluntarily quitting.
Yeah, you should just to sort of be clear on this. So I know that let's say the guidelines from the state say look, you may be open as a business, but you have to accommodate your employees who don't want to come in to work
Right.
at the business location. But there's no accommodation for people to say, oh, never mind whether you let me work remotely, I just don't want to work.
That's right. And that's the voluntary quit situation, right?
Yeah.
If you're saying my couch is comfy and I don't want to crack open my laptop or answer your phones or do anything that's job related because I'm happy claiming unemployment, that's not protected, right? So you really, I think, if an employee says to you, I don't want to come back to the physical location, I think you really have to have a serious discussion with them about why not.
Yeah.
And I think as a business owner, you should be prepared to explain,
Mm-hmm.
here's all of the things that we have done to make our workplace safe.
Right.
Here are all, in fact, just before starting this, I got a call from my son's orthodontist office, and they said, well, we're scheduling appointments now after 3 very long months. And I said, okay, but I want you to tell me what you've been doing in your workplace to make it safe for him to come in there. And they had a list of like 10 things, right? And they were ready to answer my question. And I think that you as an employer should be ready to answer the question. And you as an employee should realize that if you're saying you don't want to come back, you should be ready to articulate why. And you should be also prepared to be told, okay, well, you don't have to come into the physical workplace, but I can have you work from home. And then you better not at that point be saying, no, I don't want to work at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, in situations like, and Jason's going to talk to us about what's open, like gyms are going to open. And even construction place. So that actually was one of the people it was a construction, and the guys said, there was 2 guys, the rest of the team came back. 2 guys said, nah, we're not coming back. We don't want to. We're making more money being on unemployment, and it's a lot easier than construction.
Right.
And then
the problem is that jeopardizes your unemployment compensation eligibility. Because if you have refused, if you are refusing a job, that means you're not ready, willing, and able to work, which means you're not eligible for unemployment compensation. Now, if you're refusing to come into a physical workspace because you have a medical need, or your close family member who lives in your household has a medical need, there's an argument there, right?
Yeah,
and I think employers should be really cognizant of those arguments, and they should be paying attention, because ultimately what you want is your trusted team back at work with you, right? In whatever way, shape, or form that looks like. So be considerate, be open, and I think, be sort of understanding of the fact that, my way or the highway is not, it's not what it looks like today.
Yeah, and it's not a good option as an employee either. It's like you have to, probably both sides need to compromise on what's going on.
So Jason, what types of businesses are actually allowed to open? I mean, I feel like I'm losing track of who's allowed to open, who's not, what the Executive Order 107 even says anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Applicable.
And there's so many different executive orders now, and it is a rapidly changing situation as the state struggles to reopen business as much as it can, as quickly as it can, without posing undue risks and trying to figure out what those risks are. So I kind of have the same reaction. It's like, okay, I'm losing track. So I went through and took a look and tried to figure this out. And there's some general guidelines, and then you can get specific. So generally, the state says recreational and entertainment businesses still closed down. Non-essential retail, for the moment, and only for a few more days, you're limited to curbside pickup. Most other businesses, you can proceed with appropriate mitigation.
So like non-essential retail is like Ross and Marshalls and TJ Maxx?
Yeah, and they're about to be allowed to reopen. So let me give a high level and then dig deeper. And one of the high level things is the state's maintaining a website on this, and when it gets confusing, I have to say their website's actually pretty good.
good.
And in a world where it's hard to find answers online, and it might be especially hard to find answers from government online, the state's actually doing a pretty good job of making things comprehensive.
Jason,
And their site is covid19.nj.gov.
I was going to say, can we put that in the chat? Because that would be great, something great to keep checking on.
Yeah, I will post that when I stop yakking next time. So that's one general rule. Another general rule is, as the state says, simply put, people should not be outside of their home unless they need to be. That has not changed. If you can stay at home to work, if you don't have to go out, stay home. Because if you stay home, you're not getting sick and you're not threatening someone else getting sick. And then if you open, there are extensive mitigation rules and protocols that you have to follow. They are industry specific. They're different for retail. They're different, in fact, for essential retail versus not essential retail. They're different if you're just doing a curbside business, if you're in construction, if you're in food and restaurant. But what all these rules have in common is you're always maintaining at least a 6-foot difference, which PS isn't really enough scientifically, but it's better than nothing. But the rules from the state are at least a 6-foot difference. You're always working to eliminate or reduce physical contact, like at payment and delivery of the goods. Employees are wearing cloth masks and gloves. Frequent cleaning and sanitization, cleaning your hands, cleaning counters, all that stuff, and reducing the number of people. In some cases, half your staff, in some cases, only 10% of your staff, like a restaurant that's doing curbside. Let me run through some categories specifically, though, to answer Ayesha's question, if that's okay. So recreational entertainment businesses still largely closed. That would be gyms, fitness centers, classes, spas, the indoor areas of malls, arcades, public amusements, libraries,
And that's
salons.
And
Go ahead.
that's not on target for any certain date, right? Because I know salons are the 22nd.
Yes, salons are the 22nd, barbershops are the 22nd.
Okay. Everybody knows the date for salons because we are tired of discovering new hair colors.
Yeah.
My husband has said my hair is orange now.
Yeah. I did mine myself, can't you tell? And it's growing back like gangbusters, except in some places. There are some recreational businesses that can open under certain circumstances, like driving ranges. And if you're a golfer, you know what the rules are for golfing and things like that. Let's get to what's now open. And there's a long list. What's open now? What can be open now? Essential retail businesses can be open. That's your grocery stores and your hardware stores and stuff like that. Certain outdoor activities at recreational businesses under a whole set of rules, including less than 25 people. So if you got an archery range or a batting cage or a golf driving range, a horseback club, you can open up. Golf courses can be open under certain rules. Drive-in movies, drive-in religious services, drive-in graduations.
New Jersey?
There's one actually in South Jersey. And there's one in near Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. But there's one I think it's in Cumberland County, has a drive-in, and they're going to be doing great business.
Oh my God, they must be packed.
Right.
All right.
But you got to remain in your car, so you can't go to the lobby you can't go get your popcorn in the building during the intermission.
I wonder if they'll show that commercial with the people with the soda and the dancing across.
And they'll put tape across them. Non-essential retail. This is one set of businesses that has been allowed to open. I knew of some non-essential retailers that stayed open curbside anyway. You weren't supposed to do that, but now you can. Non-essential retail for right now can be open for telephone, online, and curbside pickup.
Okay.
And beginning June 15th, they can allow people into their stores.
So Jason, before you go on, with the non-essential retail that took the risk, right? That decided they needed to do this for their survival. So what did the risk look like? Did they get cited? I mean, what happened?
Yeah, and I think this risk question is going to continue to apply, because even if you're allowed to open, the question is, are you following the guidelines? Are you open the way you're supposed to be open, or you just threw it open and said, we're going to do whatever we want, right? There are sort of two, I think, main categories of risk. One is, the risk with the state that you did not follow the law. And just because it's an executive order, it's still the law. The risk with the state is violating those guidelines, either opening when you're not supposed to or not following the guidelines of the executive order. That is a disorderly persons offense in New Jersey.
Wow.
Same if you aid and abet someone to do it. That would be, for instance, if you are an employee and you come to work and you do this working, might you be aiding and abetting? I mean, you may have a defense. We can get into that.
Wait. So an employee who's told you need
I'll
to
give you
report back to work or lose your job and hence lose unemployment benefits too because you declined to do that.
Declined work.
Would they have a legitimate argument?
Let me put it this way. Do I think the state's going to go after like the cashier who just showed up for work? No. Do I think if you were the manager of the store and you didn't own the store but you were the manager and the authorities show up, I think they're going to say you're the manager. You're aiding and abetting. If you fall within those categories, we'll put aside for a moment the fine points of what aiding and abetting any violation is. You're subject to a fine of $1,000 for each violation or a term of up to 6 months in jail. Now, do we think that's going to happen? We don't know yet. Some of that is how much time the state has to enforce these things. But you are at risk if you're ordered to close but you stay open, if you're not practicing social distancing, if you're letting too many people in. And I think where you are seeing these things happen are things like, by the way, this would also apply to like, I'm a homeowner, I have a big party anyway. Like, so my kid's graduation, we were going to have a lawn party. I invited everybody. We're having a party. I don't care that it's more than 25 people. Okay. I think you're at risk. And if I were the state, I'd be looking for people to prosecute to make an example because that's how you get better enforcement. So one risk is you commit a disorderly persons offense. I think for some businesses, a more substantial risk may be that you're courting civil liability. And it looks like this. Someone visits your store and then they get sick. And then they get medical bills that they can't pay, or they get really sick and it's, and they're out of work or whatever else. They or their estate or perhaps someone's insurance company says, this is a big loss. Let's go find pockets to share that loss. And we're into the whole world of personal injury tort law. And in that argument, what would I do if I were looking for someone to recover? I would say, okay, what are the 3 or 4 places this person visited? Let's say I can't even establish that it's one. What are the 3 or 4 places this person went? I'm going to sue all of them. And we're going to figure it out in the process of litigation. So now I'm already defending this lawsuit. Then the test in that lawsuit is simply, were you negligent? Did you exercise due care? Did you give someone the reasonable amount of care that you are due to provide to anyone? Just like you got to salt your sidewalk is an element of due care when it's icy outside, right? Just like I've got to light the steps at night is an element of due care. So arguably is whether you are following all these guidelines about how to be safe to the people who visit your business or to your coworkers. To take it up a notch, violating these protocols may be argued to be what's called negligence per se. That is, I don't even need to get into an argument with the jury, was this a good standard of care or not? I can just say to the judge, look, law says you can't do it. They did it. They're negligent. Now all we talk about is damages and proof.
Okay, so if I had a brick and mortar, I don't want to open. You just made me want to keep my doors closed because, I own a coffee shop. I'm trying to get back to work.
Well, some of this is the risk you have anyway, right? If you own a coffee shop, you own a retail business, whatever business, you're providing professional services and people are coming into work. Some of this is your regular routine level of risk, and you have insurance, and the insurance covers it.
But Alisa,
but to me, the question is, what if you this is an easy one to blow, right? It's really, if you like, I let too many people into the store, I'm letting people work without wearing masks and without wearing gloves. It's just like not clearing your steps. Okay. I mean, you're sticking your neck out.
So as long as
and
we stay within those parameters.
as long as you stay within the parameters, because you also want to be in a position where the insurance company finds some reason to deny you coverage.
True.
So listen,
Aisha, what were you going to say?
I was going to ask you a question. So I know that you represent a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. How many are they still standing? Are they? I mean, we're having this conversation about reopening.
Yeah.
What I mean, like the mom and pop coffee shop. I know you've talked about them. Did they make it?
Yeah, we'll find out. You know what? I think the proof is going to be when things open. So like for our brick and mortar stores that are closed, a lot of them survived because they were in good standing before this happened. They did okay. They've actually gotten grant money. They have applied. They're actually in the process of applying for PPP. So when they do open, they have that time to pay their people. So those things will be good. But also, and so that also makes that better for them. But the people who are in service businesses who have been able to still provide their services, they're doing great. Like, I know I've mentioned this before, but construction is through the roof. If you own a pool company, you do hot tubs, you do anything that has to do with improving your home, those are, as a matter of fact, I was just talking with somebody, and pool supplies are non-existent. You cannot find, they're having a really hard time doing in-ground pools because the supplies are hard to come by, because that's what everybody's doing. So it is going to be really, really good. My concern is, actually someone, one of our attendees actually addressed this a little bit, talking about, like, there's surveys out that employees are going to start looking for jobs that are resistant to this type of closure. And so, and I think we have to think about that too. So my clients that weren't affected at all, e-commerce, I was talking with Arthur Frieden of Basic Creative. He does e-commerce marketing. He is so busy. It's insane, because bras and underwears are selling like crazy. I don't know. At first I'm like, what? And sweatpants, things that you expect, but dog snacks are selling, and anything that has to do with any home education stuff, for obvious reasons, because everybody's home. So those things are doing really, really well.
You made an interesting point in one of our earlier conversations, and I thought, wow, that never occurred to me, is everybody is taking their vacation funds for 2020 and putting it into the pool, the hot tub, the thing you've always wanted, but you couldn't pay for because you were—
the thing I'm staring at around the house that drives me nuts. Yeah.
No, and so I think that's what's doing really, really well in this environment.
But the thing that even the construction industry, which has been allowed to reopen, they still have to, there are still state protocols and guidelines for how they conduct their business. Your guys cannot just be running around without masks and without gloves and doing whatever they want. There are guidelines.
And no matter what, we're still socially distancing, right? So
that
whatever it is the always remembering the 6 feet rule and the mask, right? That's
right.
So some workplaces are going to have a really interesting time of figuring out how you do that.
And the other thing for the construction industry is nothing about this has created any waivers or forgiveness for the New Jersey consumer fraud laws that say home contractors doing more than $500 of work, you have to have a written contract with specific language in it that, you've got to provide all these protections to the consumer. And if you don't, your risks include you don't get paid.
It's funny, like I'm thinking about, more and more businesses are opening and more things are happening. Aisha, what about, so what do you do? Like it's almost like all your processes have changed. So like, and so you're talking about communicating to the business owner, communicating to the employees, like what's going to happen. So like, do you need to make everybody aware of new policies? How do you do that? Change the handbook? Do you put up posters, or I don't even know, like what?
Well, I think you're absolutely, the Department of Labor has additional posters to put up in terms of sort of COVID type announcements.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Do. As you bring employees back to work, right? Even just from the employee's perspective, and Jason, you can weigh in as well from the business side of it, right? You need to retrain your employees on letting them know what the rules of the road are now, because it's a different world. So reinforcing that, yes, in fact, this is a great example. I was talking to an attorney who works at Gibbons, huge firm, huge Newark offices. And she said, yep, my office is five yards from the ladies' bathroom, but we are now a one-way traffic office. So I have to walk 10 minutes around the office, basically around the entire floor to get to the ladies' bathroom. She said, and that's on the days that I'm allowed to come in. And she's an adversary on one of my cases. So I thought, well, this is hilarious. She says, yeah, if I'm allowed to come in one day a month for a block of 4 hours, because the law firm has to make sure that there aren't too many people in the office, that you can actually manage. The secretaries sit at desks that are clustered together. You have to make sure that they're socially distanced there, right? You have to make sure that aren't more than a certain number of people using the ladies' room. And this whole traffic flow thing is a big thing that offices are going to have to implement. But to be able to do all of that, you have to train people.
Yeah. So like, what do? You bring in like, okay, half the office, everybody stands 6 feet apart. This is how the traffic pattern's going to work.
Right. You put signs.
Like, do you have everybody sign off and say like, okay, I understand this? Like, how do you get that communication so that it's verified, so that they don't come back and say like, oh, well, I'm sick now, but my company didn't let me know about it.
Right. So the important thing, at least, and I'll hand it off to you, Jason, but my office building sent out an email to the entire building that said, these are what our safety protocols are going to be. So every individual business within this building needs to follow these protocols with respect to the common areas, right? So there's signs everywhere now. Before you enter the building, you have to wear a mask. Before you get on the elevator, there's a sign as to how many people are even allowed on the elevator. There's signs reminding you about social distancing and mask wearing all through the space. These are things that are easy to implement, right? Yeah. It's not a high cost element to that. And plus then the high cost part of it is they've really increased the number of cleanings. They're letting us know in writing how often the cleanings are being done, what types of cleanings are being done. And I would say that that's actually a pretty great template for attorneys to be telling their clients to be doing as business owners. Jason, what do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, once again, there's so many different factors going on here. And one is your ability to show you're exercising due care, right? So the more you have this, the better. But I think another component is this is a competitive advantage. This is going to be a competitive advantage for businesses for as long as we have anything other than a great vaccine. You're going to separate yourself by showing how serious you are about these protocols, and it's a competitive advantage for customers, and it's also a competitive advantage for recruiting, because there's huge unemployment, but there are also a lot of people that that may just not want to go back to an office or come to your place of work unless you're holding them out there. So to get to the other part of your question, which is how do I go about this? Now this gets into the world of sort of, it's kind of the same as corporate compliance, but it's still something small businesses can do. So for example, if you say, these are our protocols, we don't just talk about them, I've written them down. Like, I needed to shop, I needed a plumber. Okay, what plumber got my attention? The one that when I went to the website, I got a pop-up that said, these are the 10 things we do because of because of COVID. Okay, now you got my attention, right? So don't just do it, write it down. Don't just write it down, talk about it. And then if you're really small, take a piece of paper, get people to sign it when they show up. I signed it, I read it. If you're a little bit bigger, by the way, and you've got like a learning management system, you have some SOP system, make it an SOP. It's not that big a deal. Make it an SOP, distribute it, let people sign off on it that way, not only because you're protecting yourself from liability, but maybe even more importantly, because then you can fairly say to your customers and to recruits, we have 100% sign off on this policy.
That's a really good point you bring up. And I think a lot of the new payroll systems, like Gusto is a great payroll system. Mm-hmm. You can actually just upload a document there and distribute it to your employees and say, like, look, this is what we're doing. And they can acknowledge that they've seen it. And I actually think, someone in the chat put, employees are going to be looking for places, they're going to be resistant to this if it happens again, but it might make them more inclined to go someplace that puts those policies out there, that says, this is what we're doing to keep our people safe. It also makes you feel like you're cared about too. Mm-hmm. If the owners and the managers are all in agreement that they're trying to help you stay safe and maybe give the employees guidelines on how to keep themselves safe.
Listen, I want to ask you a question about your business, right? Because I see in the chat, and I love this because I've always thought this was so cool about you. I see in the chat that Lisa Snyder says, oh, I'm so glad I work from home. And you're like, yeah, me too. Tell us about how you have your business structured. It's always been structured like this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when COVID rolled in, you had no issues.
Oh, well, I wish, but it was, things did have to change slightly. We always did work remotely. If we did go see some clients, but that was always me. And it was more of, just a courtesy. But since this, we haven't seen any clients, and we actually had to make changes internally to how we did things through policies of checking in on everybody. It's been an extremely stressful time. I was actually laughing. There was someone wrote an article. It was on Forbes, and they said, "Ooh, the 6 things you should do at home now that you're working from home. Keep your day the same and do all these things." And I started laughing. I said, "Yeah, maybe for the first 3 days." I mean, seriously.
Yeah, I know.
Now, neither one of you need to do this, but I'm sure if you stood up and showed me what you're wearing on the bottom half, it's not like suit pants. So it's okay. You manage with what you have, and you got to do what works for you. And so we've had to change a little bit in the sense that we talk much more often as a group. Yeah. And that's become, we've actually hired during this period. And that has been, actually, we have a couple of clients that have been hiring during this time, that not only have they brought their workforce back, that they've increased it. So it's been
the thing I loved about your business is that while the rest of us have gone kicking and screaming into this Zoom environment, you've always done Zoom. You have, you represent people around the country. Your employees are, spread out. So that's pretty great.
Yeah. And we actually had a small change. We didn't always have our cameras on. And now we always do, right, Danielle?
Always do. Well, and in terms of, the larger business environment, we've always operated largely virtually, and now we're just all virtually. This is going to be an important distinction for businesses for quite some time. And I heard two things recently, or experienced two things recently that really stood out to me that I'll throw out to you guys and see what you think about it, both from a business operations and professional point of view. One is just it being noted, something I hadn't really thought through, but the sort of as people, what we're finding now is it was easy when it was just stay at home, don't do anything. Okay, I can follow. Now we're getting into hundreds of decisions that organizations and businesses have to make about little nuances of their operations and how they're going to go about it. One that stood out to me were things like, well, if I'm in a building of any height and people have to take an elevator to get to my office, I have to think about how slow the elevator service is going to be when you go to a world that it's one person in the elevator at a time. So if you're in a high rise in Jersey City,
Wow.
right, or in and you've got a decent sized office and you've got to bring everybody up by elevator, it may take hours to fill that building and to empty that building. So a lot of thinking about those kinds of protocols. And one of the things that's also emerging to me is I'm following pretty closely what higher ed is doing and whether schools are going to reopen residentially for students in the fall. And one of the things they're hitting is, wait a minute, we've got faculty members, never mind the students. What about them going home? What risk does that pose? Oh, well, now we realize we have faculty members and deans who are a little older, and they don't want to come.
Mm.
And it's sort of like life's going to have to be hybrid for a while, even if you think you've got everything licked. The other thing that I'll just share as an experience that to me links, although it won't sound like that as a beginning. I had my college reunion over the weekend. It was a big reunion. It was supposed to be in person, supposed to be a party. That didn't happen. And sort of at the last minute, there was a decision, hey, let's see what we can do virtually. And there were people who recorded performances, and then everyone got on a Zoom call, like hundreds of people on a Zoom. There were recorded performances. There were breakout rooms for people to have conversations. And people, not only was there good attendance, people were thrilled. People were so happy to have an occasion to reach out and have a conversation and see people they used to know, and just have very mundane, like, how you doing? What are you up to? Kinds of conversations. They were so thrilled with that connection. And so if we as employers, or between us and our clients, let's say it's particularly if it's a personal service kind of a business, can just establish that human connection through this time, I think it's going to reap great benefits personally, but may also have great benefits from your business's success.
But let me throw this question out to both of you, because Alisa, you and I met at an in-person networking event, right? And we've continued to meet in person up until February, and then we moved to this. Jason, you and I also met at a Chamber of Commerce in-person event.
In-person event, that's right.
So things are different now. How do you network these days? How do you meet new people?
Oh, wait. I actually talked to Hillary Spivak yesterday. But if
You can meet the whole world through Hillary.
Hillary knows everybody. So I've been thinking about this. Because, I said, I'm not networking, but it's just, we're going to network differently. I think no matter what, there's going to be less in-person networking. So I was talking with Hillary, and she actually is friendly with someone that she met, and she met them before this. And so they are getting together and they are referring people that they know who can help each other. So the one woman she met, she went on her LinkedIn network, looked through and said, who can I introduce Hillary to? She went through, she found 2 people. She didn't introduce Hillary to them. Hillary talked to them. and one of them was not a good fit, but the other one was. And so now Hillary now has a new client and things are like really great for her. And I thought, yeah, that's more of the direction we're going to be going in,
That's a
or
great
at least
idea.
I'm going in.
Right.
It's going to be it's almost going to be more personable,
Mhm.
you know, than or actually in person. It's going to be more personal. Sorry, wrong word all around there.
But Jason, you're, you know, as we can see from your Tiger Labs picture, right? You do represent a lot of technology companies.
Mhm.
How are you continuing to connect with them? How do you grow your business now?
Yeah. Well, the many of the networking groups that I'm in or like to be in have moved to virtual meetings.
Nice.
It for some it took some time to figure that out and to sort of decide they were going to go ahead and do it. And it was interesting because for one of my groups, there had sort of been a very affirmative decision before all this not to offer virtual as an option. And so to now move to virtual sort of was not merely I don't like it. It was a change in policy. I think it's been very successful. I think in some ways the meetings may be more effective now than maybe they even were in the past. So one thing I would say is my experience is moving these networking groups to a virtual platform is totally working. It's working fine. Working, I think, better than people would have expected. Don't worry about it. The water's fine is one thing I would say. So the network groups that we're in, we're continuing to meet. The more casual networking, like if you were at Tiger Labs and you go get a cup of coffee and someone else is getting a cup of coffee because it's Tiger Labs is a shared workspace, open floor plan kind of a thing, that is harder to come by. That sort of just happenstance meeting is tougher to get. But I'm seeing, I think, but I think people are realizing they should feel freer. They should feel more encouraged to do sort of good old-fashioned referrals and say, I'm just introducing the two of you and see what you think. Right. And I think we will see more and more events. One of the experiences that I had again at this college reunion over the weekend was they just took a large group of people. There were like, at one point there were, let's say 100 people on the line. And it's just like, okay, we're breaking everybody into 8 breakout rooms for 10 minutes randomly. And you just wound up in a breakout and it's like, who's here? What do you do? And it was like networking speed dating, frankly. But somehow with less awkwardness, surprisingly.
So Aisha, I'm going to throw your question back at you. What are you doing to grow your business and how are you going to be networking?
So I will tell you that the introvert in me loves hiding behind a Zoom screen. I gotta be honest. I love not having to spend the time to drive to a networking event. I miss being able to shake somebody's hand or give an old friend a hug, but that's not happening anyway. And I think it's going to be frankly awkward to network wearing a mask. So this feels real to me. So I will, I do a lot of networking with the State Bar Association and the Mercer County Bar Association. I participate in the Zoom happy hours that they schedule. I participate in the CLEs. I join in where I can. And I think that that's one of the things that, if you have all this extra time because you're not driving to places or you're not driving kids to places, it's like my whole world opened up. I decided that, I'm going to take all of that time I spent driving kids around and use it to sort of start really, connecting one-on-one, right? So, last night I did a Zoom call with a friend for an hour and a half. She's always been a great referral source, and I always wanted to, make sure that we stayed connected. 2 other attorneys and I do a Zoom call every Monday morning, 8 o'clock for 50 minutes. We just chat. How's the week? How was last week? How's the week going ahead? And it really sets my week up right, because I feel like, you know what? I'm not in this alone, right? The fact that we do these calls, these presentations, are a great sense of camaraderie because you're not in it alone. And I think half the battle to feeling comfortable in this format is realizing that, look, we're all in it together. We all want to keep each other safe and healthy. The cases that we talked about of employees really not wanting to come back are sort of few and far between. I think people really do want to get back to work. I think they want to get on with their careers or their chosen pathways. But we all have to accept that we have limitations now imposed upon us through no fault of our own, right? And that you're going to have to wear a mask, right? It's not that big of a deal. If you're going to have to stay 6 feet away from somebody, just do it, right? We're all happier if you just do it voluntarily. So.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think that the theme that everybody keeps talking about and that I'm hearing from both of you is that, you know, you still have to maintain connections with people. And that's really the most important thing is to continue having conversations, have Zoom calls, have the fun Zoom calls that are just impromptu, and then have the regular ones like every Monday morning. I love that. I think that's great. We do a team call now every Monday morning. I have a call every other Friday afternoon with other business owners who are in the same business as myself. And we get together and we talk about what the heck happened this week. And we go back and forth. And I feel like, okay, I'm not in this alone. I just wanted to make sure, like we did a quick talk about the NJEDA and how information just came out yesterday about, I think it's $45 million.
Yeah, breaking news.
Grants. I'm so excited about this because what happened the first time they had $5 million and it was gone within an hour. So this is phase 2 and they have a little bit more money. It's going to be coming out on June 9th at 9 a.m. They have, if you go to their website on New Jersey Biz I'll try and get that in here. They actually have the application in several different languages, and they are providing that. And if they're looking, if you need help with it, you can go to language help at njeda.com for more information about translation to be able to fill out the application. They are reserving $15 million of it specifically for opportunity zone eligible. So I think that's going to be so helpful to small businesses that are really, really hurt by all this.
Yeah, and this program is going to be open to home-based businesses and to sole proprietorships, so like the self-employed, and home-based businesses. You can apply now. You couldn't apply in the previous round. You're encouraged to apply in this round. Certain tax-exempt organizations, 501c3s, C4s, and C7s, can all apply for funding. It's not restricted to certain NAICS codes. So the state has opened this one up more broadly. I'm sure it will be tapped out in a big hurry, although it's also limited to 10,000 a business, which, I think in some ways means that you're going to have more businesses that can take advantage of this. And that's helpful in that respect.
One of the things they're doing also is pushing a huge outreach with minority business owners. And I think doing that as a concerted effort is admirable. And I appreciate that. And from the people that I know at the NJEDA, it's something that, they need to do to make sure that the small business owners and minority and women-owned businesses are getting a fair shake at survival, because this is going to be about survival.
Oh, for some people it truly is. And this will, and the nice thing about this, again, it's a grant. It doesn't have to be paid back. It's not, you don't have to deal with any of the PPP forgiveness or any of that. It's completely 100% a grant. Yeah, and I have all the information in front of me, which I'm just reading through just the highlights. And it's $5,000 for New Jersey-based small businesses that have between 1 and 10 full-time equivalent employees. So it's pretty awesome. And they're reserving $3 million specifically for small businesses that have 5 or fewer full-time employees. So that's kind of nice that they're earmarking it for really, really the smallest ones that are the hardest hit. Oh, thank you. Who put that in there? Danielle, thank you. So
Sorry. And there continue to be the NJEDA programs to encourage reinvestment in companies, like loan guarantees programs, especially for things like I have an investor, and yes, you may automatically think of like an angel investor or a VC, but an investor is an investor. And if an investor in the New Jersey small business that qualifies into this program says, I'm going to put in more money, there are ways you can get a guarantee against the loan that the investor extends to the business, and encourage that additional investment when you need it. So the state is trying to lend some power, I think, in some interesting places. The other thing that I'd mention, from a legal point of view is I sit on my borough, in Pennington Borough's Economic Development Commission, and I know some people who are doing equivalent things in other municipalities. All the municipalities in the area anyway are working hard to do what they can do to get their own economies back up and running. You're seeing things like, discussions of opening up parking spaces to restaurants so that restaurants can have more outdoor seating or any outdoor seating, looking for ways to get outdoor spaces in the town used to help businesses reopen. One thing I would also pass along is if you're a business and you think you may be able to, let's say, operate outdoors more, or there's some local regulation or practice even that's kind of in the way of you of proceeding on an idea that you think will help restore your business, I would say go to your municipality, go right to the municipal government, to the elected officials, I think in particular, and say, I can reopen if I can get a waiver of X. I can reopen. I can do more business if you will. If you can make it clear to me, it's okay for me to do Y. And right now, I think you'll hear, you'll have a very welcome audience in your municipal officials, which in New Jersey counts for a lot.
Yeah, I think that's great. You don't know unless you ask. Aisha, we're out of time. Is there any last thing that you would that you want to?
No, I think your big takeaway is that as an employee, make sure you really have a conversation with your employer about what your fears are. Really don't assume that they know, and it's for the same part as the employer. Ask the questions, find out what's going on and why they're scared to come back to work. It's really important that you do that.
Great.
And I'll offer a closing thought, which is the closing thought I'm offering on all these things these days, which is nothing's going to get our businesses back up and running faster than people not getting sick.
Yeah.
And as an article I read in the Atlantic this week put it, quoting a public health official, we've kind of decided this pandemic is over, but it's really not. There's actually been an uptick worldwide in pandemic cases over the last few days. We're going to see a bump next week, both because businesses have started to reopen, because people have done things like go to the shore and go to parks and let their guard down, because of the protests and the way they were handled. We're going to see cases go up. And ultimately, what it's going to take to get businesses back up is people don't get sick And you're in control of that by what you do out in the public, whether you're wearing a mask, whether your people are wearing a mask, whether you're wearing a gloves, that, that and social distance of more than 6 feet, by the way. The 6 feet is 1930 science.
It's yeah.
That's what's going to bring us back, is people not getting sick.
All right. Danielle, where are we going to make this recording available to everybody?
Yes. Yes, so it'll go out in the follow-up email to all the attendees and panelists.
All right, great.
And we
Thank you
repeat
so
this in every 2 weeks.
Yes,
So
we'll be back.
for our attendees, come back in 2 weeks. Same
1 o'clock?
same Zoom time, same Zoom channel.
Oh my God, take me back to my childhood. All right, sounds good. Everybody, have a great 2 weeks. We'll see you later.
Be safe.
Bye,
All
everybody.
right. Take care.